Welcome to Writing Conversations, and today I'm going to talk to Kevin about his book and about writing fantasy blend, genre blends. So, welcome, Kevin. Hi, Kevin. How are you
Thank
doing?
you so much for having me.
Yeah. Go ahead and introduce yourself in a couple of words so people know who you are. And yeah, I'm so excited.
Hey, folks, my name's Kevin Johns. I'm an author based in Ottawa, Canada. I've just finished up the third book in my trilogy called The Page Turners. As Gala said, it's a horror sci-fi fantasy mashup. I also have a young adult thriller called M School, and then I also teach writing, so I have several nonfiction books on the craft of writing.
Yeah, I was so excited because Kevin and I are part of a mastermind group, and as a result, I was on your podcast. Was it last year or early this year? And we had such a great conversation. So I was like, "Yes, you released a book! Congratulations! I'm so jealous. How did you find time to write that book?"
Well, not only were you on my podcast, you came over and you taught my folks for an incredible
Oh, that
workshop.
is true. I did that. Oh, that was so fun. You have such a good group of people. That was good.
They
They were
really
way more
appreciated
advanced.
the training, so it was
They
good.
were way more advanced than I anticipated. I'm like, hey,
Oh.
if I come next time, I'll give them more complicated things to chew on because this was like, they were good. They were good. Uh,
Great, great.
Today, we're going to focus on your book, though, because even though I
Mhm.
want to pick your brain for all of the sci-fi and fantasy and writing knowledge, I want to spotlight your story. And I'm trying to get my Kindle to open up so we can show the cover, and it's just being slow, but I'll get there. But let's start with what you mentioned and what I was like fascinated about this book. Your Page Turner trilogy, it blends multiple genres. And I think my question is, when did you decide that it's going to be multiple genres? Was it like that from the beginning when you came up with the idea? Did it just turn it into it? And I also feel like each book, because it's a trilogy, this is the final book in the trilogy, each book is maybe a little bit more one genre than the other. Am I correct? So
Yes.
tell me about all of that.
So this project, it's a trilogy, but it started as my first novel. So I got my master's degree in English literature. I was like, oh, I'm the smartest person in the world. I know everything. Time to write my masterpiece. A naive young Kevin. And I grew up on comic books. I loved comic books. I was also kind of lucky enough, I guess, to be about the exact same age as the character Buffy the Vampire Slayer. So when Buffy was graduating from high school, I was graduating from high school. So I really appreciated that show and really related to it. And the thing about Buffy, the thing about almost all superhero comics is they're kind of like genre sluts. They just go with whatever genre. And they feel like each episode. I always loved this idea that like you'll pick up a Spider-Man comic and he's like fighting a robot one issue, and then you buy the next issue and he's fighting like an alien wizard. And it's like comic book readers just kind of get that. They're like, yeah, cool. And Buffy was the same way. I also grew up on the X-Files in the 90s, where you really get like one episode is a vampire episode, one episode is a werewolf episode. So I came from this love of literature and this love of pop culture where there already was this sense of genre mashup being a normal thing. And so when I set out to write my first book, I really wanted it to be this interesting mashup of genres. And then in terms of the evolution across the books, right? You were kind of that I was conscious. Oh, there we go. There's the
I really like
fantastic
it.
realms.
That's so cool.
So there was always a sense that the first book was going to be more of a horror book, the second book was going to be more of a sci-fi book, and the third book was going to be more of a fantasy book. But that said, they were all kind of intermingling throughout to a certain extent. And I know something you were asking me off camera was, well, go ahead and ask me the question. I guess I won't steal your question time.
No. Go ahead. Ask. Which question was it?
Well, just this idea of how do you handle that, right? How do you go about and something I did in this series is The first book is really almost exclusively a horror book. There's some magic that kind of serves as the inciting incident, but really it's kind of a vampire book. Then the second book, it's a science fiction book with aliens, but also vampires. So it's like I layered on that next genre. And so then by the time we get to the final book, the new one, now we've got fantasy layered on top of it. So the way I kind of melded those genres was by slowly adding on the genres. It wasn't like page one, vampires, aliens, wizards. It was like, I got them used to the vampires, then I got them used to the aliens, then I brought in the dragons and wizards and goblins.
So it's basically as the character is discovering that there are other supernatural beings, we discover it with them, right?
Yeah, let the reader learn and grow along with the characters as the story gets bigger, as the genre gets more complex. Let the reader kind of enjoy that experience alongside the characters.
This was reminding me, my kids have made me watch it so many times. Have you seen Zombie 1, 2, 3, 4 on Disney Channel? It's like a movie.
Zombies and Cheerleaders, that one?
Yes, so it starts with the zombies and cheerleaders, but it actually does a similar thing where in the first
That's right.
And then there are werewolves and then there are aliens, like they do the same.
I gotta tell you, Gala. I love that series. I think it's spectacular. Okay. I've definitely watched them. I think the quality might drop off by the time you get to the aliens, but those are some pretty fun films. And I have 3 daughters, so it's great to have something like that we can all watch together.
I have 2 girls. I have a 12 and 15-year-old now, but I think we started watching them like during COVID or something. I feel like that was the height of it, and now I think the next one is either just came out or is coming out. It's going to be about like mer people.
Yeah, so and it's like the next generation, right? It's like the original actors are legacy actors now. They're kind of passing it on to new younger actors, I think.
Yeah, I'm excited. So that's what it's reminding me, and I think that kids like that kind of stuff too. Because let's just I'm not sure if we mentioned this or not. This series is teen. So do you qualify it as YA? I would say YA. Or what do you say?
It's absolutely YA, I think. But the thing is, I grew up, I don't think I'm that old, but I never heard the term YA growing up. Like, we just read, like, is Stephen King's book It YA? Like, but it stars a bunch of YA kids, right?
Yeah, but
so,
no.
And that's what I read when I was like 12 and 13, right? So I grew up, reading adult horror novels, but starring teenagers sometimes, right? And so I never came at it from like a young adult perspective in terms of like, what are my YA conventions? What are the things the audience is expecting? And, I just approached it as, what did I love when I was 12 to 18, and right, the type of thing I loved at that age, and not necessarily frame it as young adult, though I think that is probably how people would call it today.
I think when I'm thinking about Stranger Things also, like I wouldn't say that Stranger Things is YA, but the majority of the cast, right, started as kids and then grew up into young adults. So technically, and this is such a different topic, we're not going to go into it, but like, what is YA? And I actually read something probably here on Substack about the evolution of the term YA, where it came from, what it was originally, how is it used as purely an industry term right now. And I think that most of the time these days people use YA as there's a certain like expectation of no open door sex, no swears that are big swears, and like certain limitation on gore, because the expectation is that underage kids are reading it. But that's about it. So if you have those elements, then you classify that as adult book, but with teen characters, which I do not know. It's so confusing.
Well, I mean, so I never have swearing in any of my books. And this is not because I'm a prude or because I'm trying to target YA. I feel about curse words the same way I feel about exclamation marks. And it's like they're addictive, right? It's like, do you ever work with a client and they're like, they write one exclamation mark and then there's like two more on that page and then there's like six on the next page? I feel like if I started dropping curse words into my writing, I would just become Quentin Tarantino or something. And like, once they're in there, what are you? So I've always tried to have extreme restraint on both exclamation marks and curse words. I also don't have sex in this series because the kids are a little younger. It doesn't really make sense that they would be necessarily. And what was the other element? So I don't have, no sex, no swearing. And then
gore.
Like, this is the thing. Gore. I have gore everywhere. So this is where I'm totally not following the rules because I love gore. So I'm careful with swearing. Sex didn't really make sense in this story, but I have in this new book, at one point there's like a big battle between humans and vampires, and at one point someone's arm gets ripped off, and then I think a vampire starts beating him with his own arm. So I love that stuff. So I don't know what this is. It's
I think gore and horror come hand in hand. I just have not really personally read any YA horror, so I don't have the experience of, and this is what I always tell my students is like read in your genre and in whatever category. Is it YA, is it adult, middle grade, and see what is the industry standard, because like I am not a huge reader of horror. I do read horror. I've read my fair share of Stephen King. I also was reading, oh my God, the one that I liked, the one about the book club in the South and the guy is a vampire. Why am I blanking out? Doesn't matter. And then there was like a huge horror gore scene where there's like a bunch of rats coming and like eating the characters, and it's like so horrible.
Okay, Gala, you gotta get me the name of this. This sounds like my jam. Book club, vampire, rats eating people. This is my stuff. You gotta tell me what this is.
Yeah, I will send it to you. Oh, it's a very popular horror author. I'm just the book is black cover with I think like a peach or an apple with like two vampire bite things and blood coming out of them. I will send you the name. It's just
I can't wait. This sounds exactly up my alley.
Yeah. If I'm gonna start like now, I'm gonna be trying to think about the name, and it's
okay. Don't worry about it. We'll find it later.
only remember when I stopped thinking. But yeah, and I think that that's also an important understanding, right? So. Do you do trigger warnings on your books, by the way?
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I run an ongoing group coaching program, and we have I do 3 group coaching calls a week. So we have lots of discussion time and lots. I've been doing this 3 calls a week for like 4 years now. So I record all of them. So I have literally 800 or something hours of me talking about books with people. And so this topic definitely comes up, and this is definitely a controversial topic, or I don't know if it's controversial, but there's definitely divergent points of view on it. And also as a coach and a facilitator of discussion, I do my best to understand both sides so that none of my clients feel like I'm choosing one side or the other. So something interesting I found on this topic is a major generational divide. So boomers and up are like trigger warnings, whatever. And then Gen X is kind of like, I'm not sure. And then everyone below Gen X is like, of course you would put a trigger warning. Don't you care about your readers? So it's interesting. I can see both sides. And I guess as a Generation Xer myself, I'm right in the middle of that. But personally, I do not. I think art should make you uncomfortable sometimes. I think art should shock you and scare you and surprise you and make you feel things. And I want people to experience that in the moment, in the story. I totally understand how triggering it can be for people. But I also think, I guess I'm going to go full boomer on you here. I can't believe it. I think people have to be responsible for their own emotions. People need to, I can't get mad that a TV show upset me. I'm upset. I need to take control of that. And you know, we all have things in our lives. I've struggled with a particular illness. And so when people on TV shows have that illness, I'm triggered. But I'm not
Mhm.
going to be like, oh, you should have censored yourself. You know, I have that illness and I didn't want to see it in an episode of this sitcom or whatever, right? It's like, no, that's my thing. I need to deal with that. But artists need to be able to tell stories and they need to be able to touch on the topics they want to talk about. So that's where I land on it, at least right now. But I reserve the ability to change my opinion at any time.
I love when there are generational divides and when there are like the lines are a little bit clearer. I am an elder millennial, so I grew up reading books without trigger warnings, but I absolutely am around people right now who I would agree expect trigger warnings. So I'm always like, and in romance books that I have written so far, I had a YA series where there's like one trigger warning worthy thing. It was like no swearing, no sex. It's just like a very straightforward contemporary YA thing. But still people got hung up on one thing because they technically step siblings because they have never seen each other in their lives. But his dad, who he has never been living with and does not know, is married to her mom. So they've never actually interacted. And then they have a romance, and people were like, they're step siblings cannot have a romantic relationship. Like, they're completely different people who do not know each other. But it was an interesting conversation. And people like, you should put that as a trigger warning that this is a step sibling romance. And to me, step sibling romance is, oh, when you're like, in the same family, you live in the same house, you're spending time together. It's like a very different quirk and a very different dynamic. And that's what a step sibling, this is like a technicality. Anyways, so, but with Open Door, I always put that this is Open Door because I think in Romancelandia, it's people are very, very particular. There are people who want to read open door sex and people who absolutely do not want it and do not want it to be surprised.
Right, sure.
So there's a very wide divide. But now that I'm writing fantasy with a lot of other elements, I'm like, what should I do? I don't know.
Well, you know what? This is such a, you've hit on something here which is so interesting, and it's like we talk about this in every writing call practically is we're constantly as authors walking a tightrope, right? And we're always trying to provide the comfort of the familiar because that's what genre is. I want something that makes me feel like the other book made me feel, but we're trying to balance that with the excitement of the new, of the fresh, of the slightly different, right? And so, you know, when you're giving a trigger warning, it's kind of like you're leaning into that comfort side of things. Hey, this is you're gonna be okay, but I feel like you're gonna lose a bit of the freshness and the excitement and the surprise when you do that. And it's not just with like genre either. It's like foreshadowing. Are we being too vague or are we being too on the nose, right? Like as authors, you're constantly kind of having to make these decisions about like, you know, do I value comfort over surprise? Do I value clarity over vagueness or whatever, right? And so I think ultimately you just have to make that choice for yourself. And
plus the genre probably is going to also play, because if I'm writing a cozy, I probably will be more trigger warning forward. And if I'm writing something that is more exciting, like I personally write like reading things that are anxiety inducing. I have no clue why. My life is already anxiety inducing.
Right.
I want more anxiety. Maybe I want to see that things can be worse, you know, so that just to feel better about what's going on with myself. One thing I also saw, and we need to go back to your book, but is that people on the front say, if you want trigger warnings, go to the back of the book and it's there.
Ooh, so that's a nice way.
I'm saying, yes, I have trigger warnings. And if you're the kind of person who wants them, go to like this page and read them. But I don't want to open it up and show it in your face and if you don't want to see them.
Yeah.
So I thought that was an interesting way to handle that.
Well, something I've worked with some writers writing pretty dark romance, like DubCon and these things. And it also becomes a point where the trigger warning is part of the marketing, right? Because it's like the level, they're like, this book in like trigger warning, one-armed billionaire, gets it on with his sister in an airplane over a third world country. It's like, okay, is this a trigger warning or are you just trying to get people interested in the book at this point?
But that's the same thing with the negative reviews, right? A lot of times when I talk to people about marketing and they get upset about negative reviews, I'm like, well, it depends on what negative review. Like the negative review that I had was, oh, these are step siblings. I'm like, but I'm going to use it for promotion now.
Yes.
Review is actually going to attract certain people. I didn't even, when I wrote this with my co-author, I didn't even realize that step siblings was a trope because it was like one of our first books that we've written. I didn't know that there were people looking for step sibling romance. So I didn't even know to use that as a promotional thing.
Yeah, like clearly you are not spending much time on Pornhub because you would be very familiar with this genre if you were hanging out with that crew.
Yeah, I'm sorry. No, I was like, oh, this is such a cool premise. And like, so now I'm like, in the negative stuff or and this is again about books. That's what I like about your book. It's kind of, a lot of times people are trying to appeal to all of the audiences. And I'm always like, no. If you're marketing your book, tell us what is it familiar? What are the genres? But also attract the specific people, right? Do you want stuff like in Buffy the Vampire? Do you want to have vampires, but also like in the zombie movies? Do you also want to have this and this? And there's going to be a lot of people who are like, no, that not for me. But there's going to be the right people, and those are the ones you want anyways, right?
Yeah, and going back to that negative review thing, like I have a book called M School, which is a thriller, a kind of teen, a YA spy thriller, but pretty dark and violent. And one of the reviews said, this book is just a mashup of James Bond meets Harry Potter with a touch of Ender's Game and a little bit of something else. But whatever it was, I was like, oh, that's exactly what it is. I was like, that's all the stuff I love. That's totally what I was going for. And so one of my worst reviews ever, like, spelled out exactly what I was going for. And so, yeah, like it wasn't for her, but her description of my book, I was like, I would read that book 10 times over. That's exactly what I loved. James Bond meets Ender's Game meets Buffy. Sign me up,
When I talk to people about comp titles, I always say, yeah, come up with comp titles. It doesn't mean that your book is the same exact thing as this book or this book. But if you have multiple elements, like when I'm writing my book, I'm like, oh, it's a little bit like Hellbent, a little bit like Discovery of Witches, a little bit like the Book of Light. And like, it's a little bit of all of those things, but it's not, yes, originality is important, but in genre fiction, going back to what you said, people are looking for same but slightly different, right? I feel like if originality is the core point of your writing, then I would recommend writing a literary fiction because I think that's the perfect place to do experimentation and to be original and to go places people have never gone. But doing that for genre readers usually disappoints majority of the genre readers because that's not what they're looking for, right?
I mean, the biggest like mainstream pop culture example of this, I would say, is the Star Wars film The Last Jedi. So Rian Johnson, who wrote and directed that film, he was like, I'm going to take Star Wars in a whole new direction. I'm going to take it into the modern day. I'm going to subvert every expectation the audience has. And some people like that film, but I would say the vast majority of existing Star Wars fans, which is millions and millions of people, absolutely hated it because it broke the contract. It was like, this is not what I want from a Star Wars movie. And so that innovation can be very dangerous, especially in genre fiction, like you said, like, especially when there's already 8 movies out or whatever, and the series has been around for 30 years. You can't just subvert every expectation and expect people to absolutely love it because you're breaking the contract.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference between that and genre mashups. Going back to your book, I think that the genre mashups is exactly what you said. If you're a fan of this and this and this and this, and this is a book that contains all of that, that is exciting. but you have a contract with the reader still. They know, okay, they're going to be expecting this melange of genres, right? And that's what they're
Yeah.
there for. So it's following the expectations, just combining them. And I
Mm-hmm.
think I was reading something on what is like publishers, marketplace publishers, something where they discuss the books that are being acquired right now, especially the debut books that are being acquired by traditional publishing. And there is a lot of conversation about that. A lot of acquisitions are genre blends. Like there are less and less specific, straightforward genres because readers do want that and something new. And by doing the genre blends, you kind of can do that, which was fascinating to me because again, I'm struggling with like, am I making this too complicated by mixing genres for my book? And
I think readers are fine with it. I mean, if you look at the last 15 years of Marvel superhero films, are the biggest films in the world, or they were until recently, they're all kind of mashups, and no one has any problem with it for the most part. They kind of get it. I think where it becomes challenging, especially for like an indie author, is marketing, right? Because Marvel, even if no one's ever read a comic book in their life, they kind of know who Spider-Man and Captain America are, and they kind of know what to expect. And even if there's some interesting genre elements introduced, they're still kind of coming in with an understanding and an expectation. Whereas if someone doesn't know you, doesn't know your book, and then you're like, it's this, and this, they're like, so is it those things or is it not? It's like, I think once they're into the book, they go, okay, I get it. I see how this works. It's getting them into the book that becomes really, really challenging on the marketing side of things. And even just something like, what shelf in the bookstore is that going to go, right? Because as I said, like in even the page turners, book 1 is absolutely a horror book. Like it wouldn't make sense really to put it anywhere but horror. But book 3 is like an epic fantasy with like meta literary elements, right? And where is it going to go? Oh, maybe over in fantasy, but that doesn't make sense. Now my trilogy is sped up all over the place. So from a marketing perspective, it's absolutely not the way to go. But so long as you can get readers to open the book and get inside, I think then things become a whole lot easier, so long as you're delivering on the genre expectations, like you said.
Yeah. Okay, let's go. We've covered exactly one question out of all the questions.
Oh my goodness. Okay, sorry. I'll be more concise.
We're all good. But I warned you because when we were discussing, let me come up with questions. I'm also like, but we probably are going to go sideways just because this is how my discussions go. Fair warning.
Well, like one of my big projects this year was I built out an 11-week book marketing course. Like I am a writer's craft instructor. That's where my graduate education is in. That's what I've always done, is teach people the craft of writing. But I felt like I've been running my own small business for over a decade now. I know a little bit about online marketing, and I think a lot of what applies to small business marketing applies to books as well. And because the second you self-publish a book, you're a small business now, right?
100%. We need to have this conversation, Seth. I'm going to invite you again to talk about.
Great. But in that program, one of the big things that like I kind of landed on, because that's the great thing about teaching something, is you really have to formalize your thinking and your approach to it. And I really wanted to do a kind of ethics-based marketing, right? Like a marketing that we can all feel good about, not feel like we're being sleazy or all of those things, because that's a big concern amongst artists, right? Like maybe if you're running a startup, right, maybe you're less concerned about coming across as overly selly or overly sleazy, but authors are so concerned about that stuff. But where I really landed was like, get clear on who your audience is, make sure you are delivering what they want, and then just tell them that. And so as hard as it is to market a book like Fantastic Realms, where it is this genre mashup, it took me about 10 minutes of thinking about it, where I was like, okay, what is this really? And I was like, it's a horror, sci-fi, fantasy mashup. And I'm just going to tell people that, right? Yeah. So sometimes maybe we overcomplicate marketing, we overcomplicate things. but also on that marketing side of things, I think when it comes to a live like this or a podcast interview or anything, we're selling ourselves as an author brand as much as we're selling the book, you know? Hopefully they're going to see how handsome I am. They're going to go, whoa, he's also charming and brilliant. His book must be awesome, right? So even if we don't dig deep into the book, hopefully what people get from interviews and things with authors is a sense of who they are and where they're coming from, right? Because sometimes that's the thing that draws you to a book. It's like I relate to that author, or I like them, or they come from where I come from, or they like, you know, Amy in the group here I just saw earlier posted Buffy and X-Files, yay, right? So there's a good chance like Amy and I might be friends, you know, right? Like we're into the same stuff. So anyway,
we'll look at your background. I'm like looking at
your
background.
Yeah. You can see we got
like, exactly perfect.
Yeah, X-Files, Star Wars, Stranger Things. I've got my nerd cred on, you know, up front for sure.
Like the right people will clock that right away. I was like, ooh. It's like my husband's office, basically, you know. Also throw in some Legos. He also has Legos.
Absolutely. They're just off camera over here, right?
Oh, no, No, but I 100% agree, and I 100% recommend with marketing is to show your personality. What is it that you like and didn't like? Amy, actually, I was just reading this morning, maybe she had a post about her friend, what her friend says about her as a person, and it's so hilarious. And it's also so learned about, like, I learned that I've known Amy for a while now, and I did not know that she doesn't like coffee. And I'm like, send all your coffee my way. I'm like, I'm drinking coffee all the time. But it was so fun. And we're like, oh my God, I love that kind of stuff, because we do get to know people as people. And afterwards, we want to see what that comes out on the page, because most of the books that I like reading, when I get to know the writer, the author afterwards, I'm like, yes, my person, I like you. Like, I like you. This is working for me as a parasocial relationship, you know?
Well, and it goes the other way too, right? Like, we've talked so much about Buffy, and then a few years ago, it's revealed Joss Whedon is probably kind of a jerk, if not a full-on terrible person, right? And it's like, this is a guy who I've like modeled my writing after, and who's been such a huge influence on me all these years, right? And so when those things start happening, you're like, oh, like, can I still enjoy the art? Can I distance it? For me too, it's the same thing with J.K. Rowling. And it's like, it's not even necessarily just her politics. It's that she's a bully. Like, she is, if you just follow her Twitter, she's one of the most successful, richest people in the world. And she spends her day on Twitter bullying your average person. And it's just like, it does impact my enjoyment of those books and those films. Like, I raised my kids on that stuff. I read every single Harry Potter book to my daughter. Yeah. And now when I think about it, it kind of gets sick to my stomach. Because she just comes across as such a cruel person. So yeah, I guess it's the old conversation of, can you separate the artist from the art and in that sort of thing?
It's another big one. It's another big one for sure. And yeah, when your heroes fall, I was I'm writing down another conversation to talk about, you know.
Okay, we can start our own show. We'll do a podcast series together. We can dig into all of it.
I'm telling you, like, I have so much fun with you. So when your heroes fall is another topic of conversation. We need to. What was the other one we were talking about? Running the business of marketing, or what was the other? I feel like
how indie authors are a small business.
Yeah, how indie authors are a small business. Oh my God, I talk about this all the time. It's like one of my favorite topics. As in, like, people need to realize this when you get into the indie. It doesn't matter whether indie or traditional publishing. As soon as you have a published product, if you want to sell it, you're a business. You like, it's just true. You're a business. And by the way, huge kudos to you, or if somebody helped you on your media kit. I loved it. It made my life so much easier. Yes, do that. People who want to go on podcasts with their books or like on conversations have a media kit like Kevin's. I don't know if you want to
Well,
share.
this is the fantastic thing. So I taught this. My program's called Signal Boost, my 11-week book marketing course, and in it we absolutely have a whole section on outreach, media outreach, this sort of thing. And I've been running my podcast for maybe a decade almost now at this point, and so like the number of cold pitches I get is or I have received is in the hundreds. Like almost maybe once a day someone reaches out to me to ask to be on my podcast, normally publicists, but once in a while the authors themselves. And so, you know, having interviewed hundreds of people, I know what I want to hear in a cold outreach, and then I know what I need in order to conduct an interview, and I know the things I want up front that are going to make my life as an interviewer easier. And so when I put together the program with the media kit, I was like, here's all the things I would want to receive when I'm being pitched by someone. And then the great thing was the program finished like 3 months ago, at which point I said, okay, the program's built, time to focus on my book marketing. And what I was able to do was take Fantastic Realms through the program that I had just built. And in there, I was like, oh, I'm at the media kit module, time to build out my media kit. And so that's where all that kind of comes from.
Do you have that as a recorded thing that people can get, or was that just a live cohort?
Oh, no. Yeah, there's you can join that program at any time, but I'm probably going to be running another live cohort, but
another link from you. It's just like I'm gonna message you afterwards, because I try to not always consistently, but I try to actually write a post after to go with the interview, and the post and the interview are not like exactly the same. It's like a little bit of a reflection of what I think after the interview, because a lot of times, you know, I'm newer spicy person, so I have my questions, and then I already know that when I'm going to do this interview, it's probably going to go nothing like I planned. So then the post is sort of like, okay, well, this is what we actually talked about, and this is what actually happened. But I like including links so people can go find you. And I think this is a great program for authors to think through and sit down. And one of the things I like about programs like yours is that I collect all of that advice on marketing and IG things and sales and whatever. I'm in the sales mode. I'm trying to learn about how to sell without sounding like a tech bro dude.
Yeah.
It's not my vibe. But I still need to sell my products, you know, like I still need to make a living. And I ended up going into a program just because, yes, I have collected all of this advice, but I need to have dedicated time and feedback loop with somebody who first of all, there are deadlines. There's a meeting every week. So by every week, I have to do a certain thing. I'm very deadline driven, so I'm doing that. And then there's a person who's reviewing my stuff and giving me feedback. And that is worth the money, even though the advice and like the information itself is not new, but it's all of that other stuff that is actually making me do the work that is precious and that I wouldn't have done on my own. So I think, again, people would benefit from a program like yours a lot. Yeah.
Well, this is something you and I and everyone in the basically any coaching realm is discussing right now, which is this idea that for a long time, what we were doing was curating the best information out there on our area of expertise and then sharing it with clients and customers. But the fact is, AI can do that in 1 second and probably better than us, right? So are our coaches no longer helpful? Are online programs no longer useful? Well, no, because I always go back to the example of like weight loss. It's like if you want to lose weight, or even not even lose weight, just get in shape, probably eat healthier and move more, right? Like we all kind of know that. But we still need a coach, a program, a shopping list of groceries to buy. We need those things in order to execute, right? And so what I've tried to say is I'm no longer like the holder of some great secret information because the AI stole it all. It's got it all, right? What do I bring now? And I think the things that we bring as coaches now are the human side of things, right? Accountability, empathy, also like the willingness to say the hard things, because more and more my clients are like, Kevin, you don't even need to look at this chapter. My AI told me it's better than Virginia Woolf, so we're good to go, right? Like I think people are increasingly curating their AIs to like give them nothing but over the top compliments, and so I think
that's what AI is very good at. It's like,
absolutely,
that is so great.
yeah. Whereas as a coach, hopefully coaches have the integrity but also like the relationship and trust built to be able to say this is not good, you can do better, it's not working, right? And so I just increasingly, when I say what can I do to help my clients, it's less and less just giving them information, and it's more and more organizing that information into a system that they can execute on, and that they can know that they have the support, they have the community, they have the accountability, and then they have the honesty from me to be able to say when something is working, but also when it isn't.
Yeah, I love that. The human factor. I'm selling the human factor. Right. This is if going back to the author part, right? It's yes, you're selling your book, but you also are selling a lot of the human factor. And I think like when I was reading books as a child, I really did not have a very good understanding about authors, and I would name the name of the book that I liked, and I would never remember the author. The author was not necessarily, unless I was like, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, things you learn at school, everybody knows. But everything else, it was like, I'm interested in the story, I'm interested in this book. I'd never even considered an author. And things definitely changed as I became an author, because I know that authors, whatever you read on the page, it's an imprint of the author. Going back to our conversation of whether you like the author or not, because whatever the person is going through at the time of their writing, whoever they are going to leave imprints in their writing. And as we change, like, at 10 years ago, me versus a now me will leave different imprints in the writing. But you are going to know what is important to me as a human being. As a result, it's going to be reflected in the book, right?
You know what's really interesting on that? I've recently read a review from Ursula K. Le Guin about the first Harry Potter book. And I found it so fascinating because she said, I found it derivative and mean-spirited. And I was like, mean-spirited? That's J.K. Rowling. And I was like, I didn't catch it, but like Ursula K. Le Guin is so brilliant that she could read the first Harry Potter book and go, there's something a little off about this person, the person behind this. There's something mean-spirited about this person. And then now I feel like, Rowling has takes every opportunity she can to prove how mean-spirited she is. But it's just an interesting example of like, we are embedded in our literature, and like Ursula K. Le Guin is so attuned to writing that she saw that when I never did, but she was so smart to know there's something about the person behind this book that's maybe not the nicest person.
Yeah, this is like a very side observation. It has nothing to do with the book, but one of the things that as I get older, I've observed about myself is the older I get, the less I care about what people think. I still am way too much of a people pleaser and all of that stuff. But I am more like, I'm going to say what I want to do, what I want, more than like when I was in my 30s, and definitely more than when I was in my 20s. And when I talk to older people in their 70s, 80s, they all say, I don't care anymore. I'm just going to be whoever I want to be. And then you actually see who the core person is, right? Because at the point where you're like, I'm going to be who I want to be.
Yeah.
That shows you who they are. And I think to a degree, having a lot of money and not really having anybody to kind of any guardrails, like no reason to pretend, sort of, that's the same thing. Like, you don't have to be an old age. You can be rich and not have the guardrails. As a result, you really show your true colors, because you show, I don't care about other people's opinions. I'm going to be my true self now, and this is my true self. I don't know if that makes sense, but
a lot of my clients are in their retirement years. They're people who spent their whole lives wanting to write and loving books, but they were working jobs, they were raising families, and it's like only finally in their 50s, 60s, 70s are they able to get the writing done that they want to get done. And in one of my weekly calls, we do exercises every week, and I wanted to do this exercise to demonstrate how a character sees themselves within can be very different from how external people see them. So I wanted to teach them that by having them think about themselves. So I said, okay, for 5 minutes, write down how you see yourself. How would you describe yourself? And then I said, okay, now for 5 minutes, write down how other people see you. And then we ended it, and I was like, okay, let's share, and I called on several people of like my seniors, like, how do you see yourself? And they describe it. And I say, okay, how do other people see you? And they'll go, oh, I didn't even bother with that. I don't give a crap how other people see me. They're like, I've never thought in 30 years what a single other person gives a crap about me. And so that exercise didn't work with my audience because they just literally could not care less what other people think of them. Because as you said, the older you get, the more you stop worrying about that sort of thing, about people pleasing and am I saying the right thing? They just say what they honestly feel. So I know exactly where you're coming from because my writing exercise didn't work because of that.
That makes perfect sense. I think that 2 thoughts on that. Try doing that writing exercise, but then they describe each other, because if they know each other, like, what
yes.
does you think about, like, that could help. I had the conversation in one of my, like, I run a group where we do for a year, I would take one book, and right now we're doing the self-compassionate workbook, and we meet once a month, read a chapter, and then we just discuss so people know each other well. And I was like being very down on myself in one of grades, and they're like, oh no, you actually had this and this and this. And it was very interesting to see how they see me, because they see me a lot more positively. And in my head, I like catastrophizing everything. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst person ever. So that was a nice exercise too. But the other thing I was thinking is, in your writing, especially in your first draft, I would always encourage don't care about your readers. Even though I always say, yes, genre conventions, yes, you want to what you promise your readers, but in your first draft, like, that utter honesty and pretending that this is the journal that nobody will ever see, I think is the best way forward. And then when editing comes, you can, move things around and decide what belongs and what doesn't based on your reader expectations. But don't censor yourself on your first draft. Like, it's such a cathartic experience, but it's also where the best work comes out, I think, when we don't care. I don't know.
I would even build on that advice of, like, try to go out there in terms of, like, histrionic, go over the top, because, like, 90% of the time I read a client's work and I go further, push the drama further, push the emotions further, push the comedy further. We play things so close to the chest. We don't want to get cheesy. We don't want to, seem like a soap opera. It's your first draft. Go soap opera. We can always rein things back in, right? But everyone, it feels like, writes so conservatively, like, oh, don't want it to be goofy.
Yes,
be goofy, be dramatic, be histrionic, and then pull it back.
Yeah. One of the things I did several years ago, I need to do it again. I had a year of exploring the word and storytelling in different formats. So I did improv classes, playwriting classes, screenwriting classes, songwriting classes, just to see how storytelling works in formats that I have no stakes in. Like, in writing a novel, and like, I need to write this book, it needs to be a certain way. There, I'm not going to be an improv artist or a playwright or a screenwriter or a songwriter. I have no stakes. And it was so cool exploring. And like, I feel like I was a lot more honest as a result with this, because I had zero stakes. And stakes are important. And stakes stop a lot of people from following what they actually want to do as a result. And same thing in their writing. So again, just write it as a journal. I don't know.
Well, one of the things you were going to ask me was if being a teacher. No, no,
on
no, no.
going.
It's good. It's just it's a good transition into one of the things you wanted to talk about, which was, do I find being a teacher of writing like blocks me up at all when it comes to my own writing? And I would say not at all. Like, I really execute on my own advice. I feel like most of the time I do follow my own advice, but I feel like, and this is probably in my own head, but I feel like as an instructor, the stakes are higher that it has to be great. Right? Like, I do feel like that I have that pressure on myself to be like, okay, I don't just need to follow my advice, I need to demonstrate that my advice works. Right? And as a writing coach or a writing instructor, that is where I do like worry and get nervous and all these things that like I wouldn't normally feel, like going on a call like this, I've done this a million times. I spend my life talking with cool people about writing, the stakes are pretty low. But when it comes to like my new book is out, I do feel like, oh God, I hope the clients like it. I hope the clients think it's good. I hope it is good, because there are, I feel like, stakes that I put on myself, at least. Do you feel that way as a like a leader of writers?
For sure, because also like I have written, so I have 9 books published, and then like the first books that I published, I would change a lot of things because that was so many years ago. I've learned a lot of stuff. So like if people are going and asking me about story structure, I would say do not read We Bland. The first book of We Bland was written as a serialized fiction. It has very little to do with any kind of story structure. It is episodic at its core, and it is still fun. It's a very fun book, but it ain't a good example of good story structure.
I'm right there with you with the page turners. Book 1 was my first book. And then I did book 2, and then I went off and started my business and wrote other things. And I'm only now coming back finally to the 3rd book in the series, which I think is by far the best. But that's obviously not where most people are going to start. Most people are going to start this trilogy with my first book. But here's how I deal with that. And maybe you can do the same mindset. Like, I love punk rock. I grew up listening to punk rock, being in punk rock bands. And not even punk rock, like rock in general, if you go back and listen to a band's like first album, or even better, like their first demos, they're not that good, right? And it's like, I love being able to see an artist evolve over like a career. And it's like, would I want, like, I don't know, whatever, some band that you and I love, would I want them to go back and like erase their original album or redo their original album? No, because there's something like authentic about it. And so that's how I feel about this first Page Turners book. Same thing, like, is it the pacing I would have used nowadays? No. Like, I think Act 1 is probably a little too long. But I'm not going to go back and fix that, because I think there's like an interesting experience to go through alongside an artist, to see them evolve and understand that like art and stories and writers and musicians change as they go, and hopefully get better.
Yeah. Definitely get better, but also I think it shows you that you as an writer are able to evolve. And one of the things that is one of the most controversial things that people call me out on social media, I always say that writing is not magic, that writing is a skill. And people are like, no, but look at Toni Morrison. I was like, Toni Morrison was an editor first. She spent a hell of a lot of time honing her craft before she became popular. And she is a stylist and a craftsman to the highest degree. So to me, I think that if you just say, oh, this is just talent, that's actually kind of like doing a disservice to Toni Morrison, because she spent years and hours, months, whatever, right, crafting that thing. She spends time. That is why that stuff is so good. So I always say that writing is a craft and not a magical experience. Just stuff doesn't get downloaded to you and it's just like perfect in the first draft. And I think that's a lot of times where people give up because they look at their first draft and they compare it to the real book and they're like, oh my God, I thought this is horrible. But look at the first books by those authors, and especially like even the published books are going to be edited by editors usually, right? Unless you go indie or something, but right. So there is an evolution, and it means that you can have this evolution. That your first book might not be the best book, and a lot of people also get imprinted on their first book, and they think, "Oh my God, this is like the book," and that's it. And for majority of writers, that's not true. The first book is a book, and then you usually get better. So, anyways, I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore.
Well, it works the other way as well, right? Where everyone is like, when they play the comparison game and they're like, "Oh, my book's so bad," and you're like, "Why do you say that?" And they're like, "Oh, I read The Great Gatsby last night, and my book is such garbage compared to The Great Gatsby." And it's like, I don't remember the name of the book that Fitzgerald wrote after The Great Gatsby, but it's not good. It's like we teach the fundamentals of storytelling, but there's no secret to a masterpiece. Like that just is coincidence and circumstance and situation, and like it's not like Fitzgerald was trying to write a worse book after The Great Gatsby. It's just the next one, the pieces didn't come together in the same way. And also, I think he had moved to Hollywood and was struggling with alcohol, and life plays a role in all of that. And so I think it's fun to look at an artist's career as a whole, right? And instead of just going, "Oh, The Great Gatsby is so good, I'll never be a writer." Well, that's not the only thing Fitzgerald wrote. Look at it in the context of his entire career, right? Not in the utter peak of the greatest thing he ever wrote.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Whenever I go to an art museum, I always, if it says an artist that I'm not familiar with, I would always go and research for this particular collection. Research the artist and what is this artist's life like, especially if it doesn't matter whether it's a contemporary or somebody who's dead. And then during the time when they created this collection, what was going on in their life. And then when I go and I kind of look at the art, I can see the reflection of whatever is going on in their life. And I feel differently about it. And sometimes it's nice to go blank and just see, okay, what does this piece of art makes me feel? But there is also a certain depth of interpretation when you're looking at it and you know the story behind, like why is this way? And I think with writers, it's the same thing. If you're reading the book, it's your first impression, but then I love going and researching, well, who is this author? What are they about? And then I have a slightly different lens on what I'm reading. And a lot of times I appreciate things more as a result too, because I can see their imprints in the story more too. I don't know.
I had a professor when I was doing my master's in English, and he said, these other students out there, they're so silly. They're studying history, they're studying geography, they're studying economics, they're studying society. He's like, all you need to do is study literature because you get all of that, right? What is it to study Shakespeare? It's to study poetry and storytelling and theater and Elizabethan culture and 17th century life. And it's like by studying a book and then studying the world around the book, you get an entire education on so many different levels. And that's why book people are the best people, right, guys? We're so smart because we've read so many books, and it shows you the bigger world out there.
But it is true. I always remember that I was during when I lived in Russia. When we had birthday parties as kids, we would always have some kind of a game that is kind of what is called, like when you go to pub trivia games. We will always have some trivia games, and like I don't know, this was like a thing in my group of people, my group of friends, and I would always win a lot of those trivia games. And they're like, "Why the heck do you know this? Like, what's up?" I'm like, It's just because I read a lot of books. Like there was a question about the Sargasso Sea, and I'm like, oh yeah, I've read a book about that. There was a question about like Dumas, and I'm like, oh, I've read a book. I know Dumas, and it's just like random factoids that
My
like
my mother-in-law never went to post-secondary education. Got high school, that was it. But she read constantly, and she was so knowledgeable and so intelligent, and yeah, great at trivia too. I mean, and this is why here's another one of the questions you were going to ask me. You said I take my work seriously and not myself seriously,
yeah.
and it's because, like, you know, art should be fun to some extent. Like, there's no point. Life is short. There's no point in doing things that aren't fun. But at the same time, I think books are really, really important. Like, I take the value of books and art and storytelling profoundly seriously, because this stuff can change lives. This stuff can save lives. This stuff can topple empires. This stuff can change the way we see the world. And so, you know, I always try to keep my coaching and my interviews and all of this fun, right? Like, let's have fun. Life is silly, but at the same time, this is a very, very powerful art form that we have chosen to undertake, and it's also an art form that's dying out. You know, we are preserving something profoundly important and carrying it forward into the future. And to anyone watching this, or anyone in the trenches doing the work of writing a book, it's really important stuff that you're doing. And so, you know, thank you for taking that on, and I'm excited to be on the journey with you, wherever the words might take us.
I think this is one of the things I like about being a creative writing teacher and coach is I can only write so many books in my life, even if all I do is write books. So it's very important to me. I always call it the ripple effect, to be the ripple where all of these other people write their books. Because I go to parties or events, and as soon as I say that I'm an author, people are like, oh yeah, and I have this idea, or yeah, and I wrote like 3 chapters of a book. And then because they don't know what to do, there's so many people who just never proceed. And I'm like, there's so just sitting in people's heads or in the first 3 chapters on their computers. And I would really want to see more of those books out there, whether they come out as books or as screenplays or plays. I feel like so many options for storytelling, but I just want those out. I want them to exist. So okay, we are sort of at a time, I believe. Yeah, we're after it. So we've been at it for longer than an hour, but I wanted to have one more question that I didn't get to. Looking back, I'm going to read the question. Looking back at the completed trilogy, is there something you understand about storytelling now that you wish you'd known before writing book 1? We sort of touched on it, how you book 1, book 2, and book 3 were progressively more craft. And like you knew more about the craft as yourself, but in general, if somebody is approaching, and I'm asking it for my own good too, if somebody's approaching writing a trilogy, is there any kind of advice that you give them or yourself in the past?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I love that you kind of switched that, because like, I'm a huge Bob Dylan fan. I went through a phase of my life where I was utterly obsessed with him. And he has a song, and the lyrics are, she's got everything she needs. She's an artist. She don't look back. And I think Bob Dylan kind of lived his life by that theory of always pushing forwards, always doing new things. And even when he played old songs, he played them in new ways, right? And so I think I try my best to live my life in terms of like not regretting the past and not saying, oh, I wish I could have done things differently. So I don't know if I would give myself any different advice, because the journey we go on is sometimes the journey we need to go on. And I think a lot of the mistakes and the struggles I made with that first book is what led me to being a teacher and a coach. And it's like, and that's really where most of my excitement and energy and like feeling like I have something to contribute to the world comes from. So I think me really struggling through that first book actually led to tons of great things. That said, do I have any advice for a new author starting a trilogy? Boy, do I ever. But like, I think maybe one of the number one things I see is that first time authors overestimate how much content they need because they write really, really lean. And then they think they need like 80 scenes because all of their scenes are 900 words long, right? And then a writing coach comes in and it's like, well, you have no environment and you have no physical movement and your interiority is barely there. And they're like, how do I add all that? This book's going to be 300,000 words long. And it's like, exactly, there's the problem. So, you know, if I could give a beginner author starting something like a trilogy advice, just like strip things back. What is the core that you want to write about? What is like the absolute center of the thing you're going to be drilling in on? Because there's other books for other ideas. You can't cram everything into one book. I mean, Virginia Woolf did. She captured all of life and death and existence in one book, but it was like her sixth book. It wasn't her first book, right? So for your first book, you know, simple, focused, don't worry as much about content, worry about going deep into the content that you do have.
I like that. Oh, thank you so much. This was so good. I feel like we touched like 4 questions out of the.
Hey, but you know what? But the questions don't matter. It's the discussion. We had a great discussion. At least I think so. Hopefully people enjoy it. So, or have enjoyed it.
Thank you for everyone who's been hanging out with us. And if you have any questions for Kevin, Kevin, could you tell us a little bit about A, where they can find your book, B, where they can find you? Just give a little promo for yourself.
Yeah. So in the world of marketing, especially direct response marketing, we always say, don't give people a choice. Just give them one thing to do next. I'm going to break my own rules because I have 2 hats on. I'm an author and I'm a writing coach. So as an author, if you go to kevintjohns.com/prequel, you can get a prequel to the Page Turners trilogy. So it's a little short story that takes place before all 3 books. And that would be a great way to enter my fiction author world. And then if you are an author yourself, particularly if you're someone struggling to find the time to pursue your writing or your book marketing, this is something I've found. Struggling to find the time to do the thing you need to do exists at every stage in your author career. So I have a free guide called the Busy Author Method. So if you go to kevintjohns.com/busy, you can get the Busy Author Method, and I'll share in there 12 different techniques I've used to carve out the time I need to get the work done that I need to get done in my life.
Yeah, I was just doing a survey of my newsletter subscribers, and I asked them to share one thing that they are struggling with, and I was 100% certain that it's going to be a craft question. Guess what is the number one thing people said they're struggling with?
Time?
Yes. Finding time, or actually if they have time sitting down and actually writing and not procrastinating and doing something else. Yeah.
Great. I just typed in the opt-in and it took us to about for me and for you. So I don't know what's going on there. My website's probably broken.
Yeah, I don't know either, but I was trying to write prequel.
There you go. Just go to kevintjohns.com. You can find everything there.
Yeah. Oh, I found it. I think it just got me the prequel page. Yeah. Thank you again. I will hopefully write up an article sooner rather than later. And then I will put some of the links in as well for people who are going to watch and read afterwards. This was such a pleasure. And I'm absolutely going to hit you up for like, how can we talk more? Because I have like a list of new topics we need to discuss.
Absolutely. Anytime. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, guys.
Bye.